Hey guys, it's Marina with Artworthy Life, where I teach Christ-centered art journaling that gets you into God's Word every day. Welcome to our Friday live art journaling, where we go through an entire journal page from start to finish. So welcome. As you jump on, tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to hear that. And we are starting off a new month. This is our first live in September. So I'm super excited to have you guys because we are switching gears. I had a long run of these awesome, really fun nautical themed pages. If you missed my live yesterday, I walked through all the pages that I did for the previous month that were all blue and nautical and had a bunch of fun different designs. So if you missed that, go back and watch that replay. It's short and sweet and really fun. But this month in the Artworthy Journal Club, we're going to be focusing on sunflowers. So I want to give you guys just a little taste of what we do inside the club here on the live today, which means I'm going to be doing some sunflowers, but I'm going to mix it up with something else that I think will be fun. If you read the description of this video, you know that I said something about the little old church in the wildwood. Or Come to the Church in the Wildwood, which is a song that my Nana loves and my mom also loves. And so I thought it would be really fun to paint a little church along with some sunflowers. I just thought that would be really charming, especially because I really like the way little old churches look. Old architecture is always really fun to paint for me. I love all the little straight lines and shadows and things you can do. And we just came back from a Bible study yesterday and passed one of the really cute little churches. And I stopped and I took a picture. So I'm going to use that today as inspiration, and we'll paint some sunflowers to go along with it. But before we get started, I see a couple of people who are watching. Say hi, tell me where you're watching from. And I'm going to read some scripture and get us started on the right foot, as scripture always does. All right, so our scripture for today is Matthew 6:33. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Matthew 6:33. Alrighty, I hope that's a blessing to you, and I hope you're staying in the Word of God. Hi, Anita, good morning. Alrighty, so what I want to first show you guys, hey, Pam from Michigan. Yes, you probably are experiencing fall before we are too, Pam. I hope you're doing well. I've been praying for you. Alrighty, so first off, what I'm going to do is show you how I'm going to make a little tracer. And I've showed you guys this before, but this is just a fun way to use any picture that you have and create a tracer out of it. Sorry, Mom made me some tea and I didn't even taste it, so I had to take a sip. Hi, Jackie, how are you? So I'm going to make a tracer out of the photo that I took of the little church building. So let me go ahead and let's see, what's the best way to do this? I think I'm going to do it this way. Let me make myself small. And then I'm going to tilt this toward the screen. So let me just show you this picture that I have. Oh, how do I know if you can see it? All right, this is going to look weird for a little bit. All right, here's my little computer screen, which you're going to just see computer for a while. All right, here's my computer screen. Oops, as long as my thing stays up straight for y'all to see it. Okay, close enough for me. All right, that looks so weird right now because you're seeing computer and computer and computer. Isn't this fun? You guys get to see behind the scenes of what I do. All right, so this is the church that I took a picture of. I wrote the name of it down, but I forget the name of it. So anyway, such a pretty little building. And what I'm going to do is actually, let me grab my carbon paper too. I'm going to take a piece of printer paper and just lay it right over top of this church. And you guys tell me if you can see this. But this little church was originally a color photo that I took. And then on my Apple phone, I just enhanced it a ton and then made it black and white. And I'm also brightening my screen as much as I possibly can. And I'm going to make this little church about that size. So you guys should be able to see through there the building. And I don't always trace directly on the screen like this because you want to be careful of your screen. But I'm going to press very lightly, and I'm going to use a fine tip mechanical pencil and just trace right onto the screen. And this is how you can use your own photos to make a tracer. So I'm just going to go down all the major lines. I do want to grab these little like shutter things. They're almost like little slats. They're not really windows, like little vent slat things. Okay, and then making it black and white really helps because it increases the contrast, which is what you really want when you're trying to paint from a photo. So I definitely like that. But then when I go to actually paint it, I'll probably look to add some color back to it. The church itself is actually white, so I didn't need to worry about losing too much color, obviously. But anyway, so I'm just going to do most of these little lines really faintly. And what I'm doing is, like, I could print this out. You could do that too. And you could trace that. That would be easy. That's totally fine to do. But rather than waste my printer ink, I could do this, or, and I should say, not or. Another reason to do it this way is I get to choose which lines I want. So I don't have to worry about all the other lines being in the way. So like there are some railings and things here that I don't really want. So I can kind of cut those out and just include basically the basic lines instead of all the lines. There's a gutter here. I don't really care to have the gutter pipe that goes down the church there. And then I can avoid that power line right there, and I can just kind of trace out these windows. So that's basically what we're going for right there. And that's all I need. So I've traced this out, and hopefully you guys can see that pretty well. I'm going to move the camera down again and show you guys how I'm going to trace this onto the page. Hey, Tammy, so good to see you. All right, so you can do that with any photo you find online, especially if you want to use a color photo as a reference photo. If you try to print a color photo, it's going to soak up all the ink in your printer. This is a great way to get the outline of something without actually printing it out. Tammy, can you clarify your question? You said, how are you doing this? Are you asking about how I traced it or what I was what I was using? Alrighty, so now I'm gonna get my graphite paper. If you're asking about how I traced it, I just had this laid right over my screen. So you can see that little church. Isn't that cute? So cute. All right, so I'm gonna put this little church. Let's see, where do I want it? I think I want it kind of like this. So right about there on my page. Let me back my camera up a little so y'all can see where that is, tracing it. So I just used my screen, Tammy, as a light box, basically, as a tracing light box. And then I laid some printer paper over it and just used a very fine tip mechanical pencil and traced right over the top of it. So pretty straightforward, nothing super complicated. And now I'm going to take my graphite paper face down and just trace this once again directly down onto my journal page. And I want to get all these little lines that I traced out. You could be a lot more precise than I am being. I'm not really worried about being super precise because I like the sketchy kind of, I don't know, kind of open looking lines that don't look really precise. I like that look, so I'm not really worried about my lines being crisp. But if you like your lines to be perfectly crisp, you could take a little bit more time and make sure everything's perfectly straight. Mine's not going to look like that. Mine will not look like that, which is fine. I like it better this way. Okay, and you can see this is really pared down. Like there's a lot fewer lines here than was in the original photo. And that's on purpose, just so I don't have to do all that extra detail, because this is my daily journal, not a big piece of art that I'm going to frame or something like that. Although you could, it'd probably be really cute anyway. There's the little arch, and then there's these cute little things by the door. Okay, so a lot of these lines are just going to kind of melt away as I start to paint, because they are, they're just kind of suggestions of the shape. You don't have to be totally precise. Okay, so there's my little church. I can erase some of the smudge lines from the graphite paper. I like to use my big eraser for getting the darkest lines erased. I always erase these real dark lines. You guys know that. And that's just because that graphite paper is so pigmented. And when I start to paint, sometimes it'll smear some of that black around, and I don't like that. I like to just have enough of the tracer to be able to see it. And I think that's kind of faint for you guys, but that's basically what we're going for. All right, now before I start to paint this church, what I want to do is actually, I have you on my TV now with Comcast. Love it. I can see you better. Oh, Tammy, how fun. So I'm big screen. That's really cool. All right, now what I'm going to do for the next part is start on a sunflower, because I don't want to paint the white of the, normally I actually would want to paint the white and stuff of the church first, but I kind of want to put the sunflower where it goes so that I can kind of shape it around it and then fill in the church. So typically, I've told you guys this before, you want to have the light colors down first and then follow up with the darker colors. But in this case, just because of how I'm trying to lay it out, I want to make sure I can see it pretty well before I start. Okay, so here's my little palette, which I didn't clean before today, because I have some orange left over from the other day when I was painting this little sunflower over here. So I'm just going to kind of freehand some little flowers everywhere, and some little leaves and things, just to kind of get the floral look all over the place. So I'm going to put a little sunflower center here. I'm going to start with orange and then just add some brown. I'm not being real specific on colors right now because I know my colors are super muddied on my palette. So yeah, you're not getting real particular colors. But I'm going to put like the center of a flower in kind of an oval shape here. And then I'll put another flower maybe right here, more like facing me. And I'll kind of darken that up with some darker brown. So if you have any browns or whatever on your palette, you can kind of use them up. I like to scoop up all the blacks and browns on my palette whenever I'm doing deeper colors and just kind of use them up like that. And I'm going to get my Mozart palette out, this Como Rebi palette. I don't know how to say that. I always sound like I'm saying a weird word when I say that. But that's how it's spelled, so I don't know. Somebody who knows the origin of that word, I think it's Japanese. It sounds Japanese. Can maybe tell me if that's correct. All right, so now I'm going to start using some more pure colors. I'm going to grab some of the Brilliant Yellow, number 3 from that palette, and pull that over here. I've got some blue going on over here. Maybe I can clean that up as I go. Okay, so I'm going to get some of this from Brilliant Yellow over here and water it down. I want it pretty watery because I want to be able to drop some more pigment into it. So this is a pretty watery color right now, and I'm going to start painting in the petals of the flowers. And some of you guys said sunflowers are your favorites. Is there anybody who is on right now that sunflowers are your favorite flower? I got lots of comments on my last question when I asked what everybody's favorite flowers were. That was really fun to see. Okay, this little sunflower is going to look like it's kind of opened up all the way like this. Just going to kind of put some petals down and some over on this side. This one's just going to look like it's sort of flopping over and got all these little curly looking petals. And then I'm going to just let that start to dry a little, but as it's drying, I'm going to drop some more orange into those yellow petals and let that kind of fade in and let that set for a little bit. And you can tell I'm hardly shaping those petals at all. I'm just splashing some color down and kind of helping it be somewhat of the shape of a flower. Now I'm going to do some more petal-like shapes since this one's facing us more. And so I'm just going to do the front layer of petals. So if you look at a sunflower, those front petals, obviously they overlap the ones in the back. So I kind of like to draw those first and give them their shape before I start to draw the previous or the behind layers, whatever you want to say, the petals that are sitting behind it. And then that lets that first layer of sunflower petals dry. And then you can add the rest of them. That seems to work pretty well. And one thing that's key with making your sunflower look more relaxed and less like stiff is you can tell I'm not filling in the petals. I have like a lot of white space coming through. And I'm also sort of letting them go lots of different directions. So they're not perfect like a sun. They don't look like a sunshine, you know what I mean? They kind of have a lot of different shapes. So now while that's wet, I'm going to try to add a little bit of orange. And I do need to add a little bit more brown to this because it's drying a little bit. So I'm going to grab the number 52 brown out of my palette and just drop some more brown down in the center of that sunflower. So it has a little bit more going on there. Clean my brush, and I'm going to get some more orange and yellow. Sunflowers are really forgiving, I think. So you can play with the colors a lot before it like starts to look bad. Because the tips of the petals sometimes turn brown, and so you can kind of add some brown to them, or you can add some orange. But if you kind of get just the basic idea of, okay, get some color down on the page and then start to pull some of those other colors through, you'll get the idea. Okay, so that's gonna kind of be the basic flowers right there. So while those are starting to dry, because I want to be able to paint the rest in, I'm going to switch, and that was my size 8 round. I'm going to switch to my size 2 round from my Hobby Lobby Master's Touch set. Oh, Tammy says she loves sunflowers and sunflower seeds to eat. Oh, and she likes pumpkin seeds. Oh, yeah, that's fun. We're getting closer to fall, so you're probably going to see a lot more recipes for stuff like that. Okay, so I'm going to grab a little bit of the olive green. Let's see what color. That's number 45 in this palette. I'm going to pull it over using my other brush because it's hard to get a lot of color. So I'm going to pull that over into my palette. And it's actually more dull than I want. So I'm going to mix a little bit of peak green into it to kind of brighten it up a little. It's more natural looking to me. I like that color, but it's just a little bit too dull for these sunflowers. Okay, and then I'm going to add more water to that so it's more easily manipulated and will flow a little better as we do the shapes of leaves. All right, clean that brush off. Let's see, can you guys still see that? Okay, good. All right, so now I'm going to grab my size 2 round, and I'm just going to start painting little leaves all around this little church. So I'm going to do some little vines that kind of come up here and paint some leaves on that. And this is really fun because watercolor brushes are typically, these kinds of watercolor brushes are typically just the right shape for doing leaves. So it's one of my favorite things to paint with watercolors is little vines and leaves and things like that that you can really play with their shape. So have fun with this if you're following along. Just experiment with different leaf shapes and things. If you know the shape of a sunflower leaf, you could imitate that. I'm just adding whatever shape I feel like. And this one's mostly just to kind of frame out the church. So I'm gonna kind of just be freehanding it all the way down the vine. Now I like to paint the vine first, or the stem, or whatever you want to call it, first, because it helps you establish where you're going to go with the leaves. If you paint the leaves first, it's a little hard to come back. But if you don't want your stem to be very thick, you can always draw it with a pencil and then follow along with your brush, and that sometimes works. Okay, and I'm still leaving white space on these little leaves because they don't need to have a ton of color all the way through. They need a little bit of light hitting them like that. Over here, I'm gonna just do some little dotted flower things. I don't know what to call this. Little clusters of like something that's gone to seed, kind of. I'm just gonna do some of that over here. So I'm just basically dotting all the way down and then drawing a little stem. And that is just a made-up plant that I just made up. I don't know. You can tell me what that looks like. If you want to add little husks of corn, you could do that. That would be kind of cute. But I'm just going to do a little bit of these like little dotted things. I like dots because they're easy to draw, but they still look like a real plant. So I'll put a few of those right here. Okay. And then I'm going to grab my bigger brush because I need to do some larger petals. And I'm going to start putting some of those over in this corner. And you can just, again, use the shape of your brush to create these leaves. And I can, oftentimes I can just kind of wing it and freehand the leaf shape. But if you want to look at a reference photo or something like that, that can help you get an idea of what those need to look like. And then I can just kind of pull those leaves down like that. Like that. Okay, so we're just kind of framing out this little church. And now that the sunflowers are drying a little bit, I'm going to add some more detail to them. Alrighty, do you guys have any sunflowers growing at your houses? A friend of mine just showed us their giant sunflowers. I think they said they planted theirs a little too late, so they aren't even blooming yet, but the leaves on those things were massive, and they were quite tall already. And then we have along the road, headed out toward our house, there is one house that has their entire yard and garden area totally like surrounded by sunflowers. So it looks like these little soldiers kind of protecting and guarding the garden. It's really cute. And they're really tall, like way taller than me. And then they're right off the freeway, so it's really fun to see them like that. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm adding some sunflower petals back behind the petals that are already there. We need to add a little bit of brown to this orange. So I was using the number 10 orange, but it's super brilliant and I don't love how bright it is, so I'm adding a little brown and a little yellow to mute it a little bit. And then I'm just gonna paint some petals in between these ones that are already here. And kind of have them come out just a little bit because I don't want my sunflower to look too wilty. This one's definitely one that's like on the end of its lifespan. Oops, okay. And then this other one, same deal, just kind of painting these little petals in between the ones that are already there to show the second layer. And that's just a matter of carefully painting around the petals that you've already painted. And then you want to just make sure that you're still bringing those petals to a point, because sometimes when you draw the back layer, they can kind of lose their shape. You still want to like be careful to make it look like a little petal. Like that. Okay, and I'm being very not super precise on each of the petals, but just kind of filling in the color so that they will, when you back up, they will look like a sunflower. That's my main goal, not to make each individual petal look perfect. Hope that makes sense. Does that make sense? It's mostly about the overall look of it, especially when you're doing a daily art journal. You don't want to be too harsh on yourself trying to make everything look absolutely exact, because maybe you only have 10 or 15 minutes to finish. And you want something that you can just kind of relax and paint that makes you happy and isn't too stressful. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more green to my green that I have going right here, and add a lot more water to it, just so that I can do some more leaves around here without it clashing with what's already there. And I'm going to kind of have these come off the sunflowers themselves. So just going to do some leaf shapes, just a few of them coming out this way, and then a couple coming out this way. And you want to think about making sure your leaves are kind of random, a little bit random, because if you look at a picture of a sunflower, you're not going to have perfect petals in all directions. So just kind of give them some breathing room to not be absolutely perfect. And then at this point, I want to kind of just fill in this area with some green without actually painting anything specifically. So I'm going to make another green out of what I have left of my yellow and a little bit of the green that's on my palette, and just kind of create a green that I can use to fill in the background, and add a ton of water to that so that it's nice and fluid. And I'm just going to kind of fill in the areas around my sunflower with little splotches of green that aren't really any particular shape. And that way it kind of looks like there's this foliage all around the yellow, all around the sunflowers, but I don't have to worry about my shapes being specific leaves or anything. I can just kind of fill that in like that. And I'm going to use some of this green to darken up these leaves over here. Add just a little bit more to them. And that's about all I need, just a little bit like that. All right, so now I'm going to paint in this church. So I am pulling up the reference photo again on my computer, and I'm going to use my size 8 round mostly for this, and just go in with, I'm going to mostly use grays and browns, or a gray brown. So let me flip this palette around to the other side, right here. And I'm going to use whatever browns and grays I have left on my palette. I'm all about reusing what's left on my palette, if you guys haven't already figured that out, because I don't like to waste, and it's just there already. So a lot of times I'm just using what's there. So I'm going to use this kind of gray brown color that just got created by what's on my palette. And I'm going to use that for the church because it's close enough to the brown inside the sunflower petals that I think it'll make a good steeple here. I'm going to kind of paint that in with a dark brown. And I'm going to leave a little white seam up the middle of that so that you can see the separation between the front and the back of that. And then I'm also going to use the same brown to do those little roof lines on either side. And I'll need to come in with darker color. But for now, I'm just getting the basic lines down. Okay, and then I can go to, and this church was black. I believe the top was black, but because I did a brown, kind of brown hue over here with the sunflowers, I want to be consistent with that. These little, I might need to use my smaller brush. These little windows are super cute. So I want to frame those out carefully. I'm just going to draw those in with my size 2 brush. And I'm not doing the little slats. They're a little too small to do. I mean, I could do them with this brush, but it would just take a lot longer. So I'm just going to fill those all the way in. Do this little diamond-shaped window. And these little windows here. So I'm, as far as my reference photo goes, anywhere that there is a real dark black, I'm just using this brown instead. That'll make it kind of actually look like a sepia photo when I'm done. So that'll be kind of fun. This roof line goes all the way up to the bottom of these windows to show perspective. So I'm just going to let them do that. This is another practice in painting what you actually see, not what you think you see. So it really helps to have your image sketched out ahead of time, but also just kind of watch for where those lines are. I'm drawing in the roof line and the edge of the roof, or the edge of the building, with this same brown. And now I'm going to come down and do this window right there. It's another diamond-shaped window. And then kind of outline that because there's some shadow in its little window frame. And I'm going to go ahead and use this brown to sketch out the outside of the building too. All these little lines. So you can see why I love watercolors. Look at how easy it is to just sketch that in. Isn't that pretty, you guys? Tell me if you like that. I'm going to add a little bit more brown to my palette. I need to grab some of this 52 brown. And I'm going to add a little bit of the blue that's still in my palette to it to kind of make it more gray. And hopefully end up with the same color that I'm using right now, or at least a close enough shade. And then keep drawing. So all those little lines that I traced earlier, I'm basically using my little tiny brush to draw all of those. And then anywhere where there's a ton of black, I'm just filling the whole thing in. So here's that roof line. If you guys have a cute little church in your town that you could take a picture of, a little historic building or something like that, this would be a fun project to work on if you get the chance. I'm really enjoying this. Okay, here's the edge of this roof, and it comes up to that steeple, and then it goes behind it over here. So that's what I'm painting there. For this section, I'm going to use my bigger brush because there's quite a bit. And I don't feel like when you're doing this kind of a sketch that you have to paint the whole thing in. So I'm going to leave some white space and just kind of let it sort of fade off like that into the background. Kind of like you were sketching it and just wanted to get the basic idea of it. I'm going to put a little more dark black over there. Okay, and then coming down the rest of the way to the windows. I'm adding a little bit more brown to my palette because I'm running out and a lot more water. A lot more water. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have? We have a little bit more trim work over here. And then this little roof is cute. Here's the little roof that's on the step of the church. I have a little too much water on in my palette right now, so that was lighter than I want it to be, but I can come back later and fill it in. And then here's the little archway. We have a little shadow there. And a lot of this I'm just going to quickly sketch. I don't even need those little detail pieces to be that dark. I'm going to do its little window under here. And the doors. Okay, and I need my brown a little darker. Okay, and we will do this edge. So if you just want to boil it down, if you just outline the little building or church or whatever you'd like to paint and just use its basic outlines as your starting point, you can just outline most of it. If it's a white building, you won't have to do much else. If it's got some color to it, you'll have to follow up and do a little bit more, which I'm still going to do even though it is white. But this gives you quite a bit. You could leave it like this if you really liked it like that. You could just let it be a little sketch of a church if you want, or of a house. I've seen some people lately like to paint their houses so they can remember what they look like at certain times, or they've painted their houses in snow. You could paint your own church if you have if your church is kind of cute. A lot of people like to sketch their own garden. If you have a fun little landscape in your backyard or whatever, you could paint that. You guys think of some ideas of buildings you could paint? Tammy says she sent me a picture of the TV. How fun! Pam says she has a garden. That's awesome. Anita says, I like that. I'm looking for a church to do for my page. Yeah, and you could just Google it because there's so many beautiful churches that you could just pull them offline and look at them, especially if you type in like old country church or historical church buildings. I saw some in Ireland that were beautiful. Actually, I don't remember if it was Ireland or somewhere else, but someone was telling me, and I ended up looking it up online, someone was telling me that there is an organization that wants to preserve the old buildings, the old churches that are all around the world. And I'm talking about ones that are like actually ruins at this point. They don't have doors, they don't have walls. And they're just old buildings that are kind of in shambles. But they're still there. Like maybe they have walls that are still structurally sound. And people want to preserve the memory of these churches. And so I was like, well, I don't know how I feel about that exactly, but it's kind of a neat idea. They are basically renting them out for camp spots, like so that you can spend a night inside of a historical church building, like old buildings. And these are ones that are like perched on a hillside with nothing around. And they're really, really old. And a lot of people are getting into that because I guess it's just another way to experience that old history and architecture and all of that, and kind of teach history while you're at it to your kids if they come along with you or whatever. But that is an interesting idea. I'm kind of like, I want to respect a place where God was worshipped, but I guess as long as you're not being disrespectful or whatever. But it definitely is interesting to see like sites where they have photos of people camping in the middle of a sanctuary where there isn't any pews left and the walls are kind of crumbling around them. It's just kind of the bare bones of an old building that's no longer in use. It was really interesting to read about. I'd never heard of that before. Okay, so I'm just filling in all these little windows, and what I'm doing is I'm painting in the glass frames because the window panes obviously are white. So I just need to paint the glass black where the shadow is showing the inside of the building, and then kind of painting the trim around that and being really just kind of sketching this. Really easygoing about it, not making it super perfect. And then the only thing I'm kind of watching is how dark are my shadows. And, this is pretty dark here, so I want this to kind of match that. So I'm going to darken this up even more. Just kind of make sure that my shadows across the whole painting are consistently dark. I don't want one area to be super bright and the other area to be super dark. So like over here, I want this to be kind of matching the rest of the building. And this little peak over here needs to be darker because we have the shadow coming from this side. And kind of up under these windows here. And then this side of the steeple is going to be a little bit more shaded. So I'm going to kind of paint that in. And a little bit here. Just not quite as much. All the way up that way. What do you guys think? We getting there? I think I'm pretty much where I want to be as far as the basic shape goes. Now I'm just going to take my larger brush. Let me see, I might want a little bit more shade here. Yeah, that's a little better. I always say I'm done, and then I'm like, wait, I see a little spot. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is grab my bigger brush and just grab some tan. I have some leftover brown here that I can water down. And I'm going to put some color kind of across the church so it doesn't look so stark against everything. So I'm just going to color it in a little bit. And make sure not to paint over my little sunflowers. Mainly I'm just making this church not look so bright white. You can also paint across the roof a little bit. And I can do this little part of the building as well, but I'm going to keep it real light on the front because obviously the sun is hitting it there, and since it is a white building, I still want it to look white. I just don't want it to be stark white against everything. So even white in real life, your eyes don't actually see white. They see a darker color. Another reason to be filling in these walls is so that I can show that there are different angles here. So I've got some walls that are facing away from the sun that need a little bit darker color. So I'm going to kind of add some shadow there, and a little bit here to show that it's facing away from the sun, and then here. And that'll help a little bit. All right, so that's pretty much all I'm going to do today. There is our little church in the wildwood and some sunflowers to go along with it, which I think looks really sweet opposite the beginning page of my journal. What do you guys think? Do you like that? So I just wanted to show this to you guys. Oh, I do want to put a little tiny cross at the top of here. I don't know if the church actually had a cross on it. I would like to have one. There we go. Cute little cross. Okay, so if you find a cute picture of a church that you end up painting, please go ahead and share it because I really want to see it. I'm going to go ahead and make this bigger like that. All right, wait, did that work? This works. There we go. I think this looks really cute opposite the September beginning page of my journal, and I'm really excited for the rest of this month to be using a lot of sunflowers. They're really sweet, and it's a good transition into what will soon be fall. So it's a very fun color scheme. I really enjoy it. If you like this, make sure that you are signed up for our Get Started Art Journaling workshop at the end of September, because we are going to have a really great time kind of getting any of you guys that are interested in art journaling, or you're already an artist and you want to know what that looks like on a daily basis. You kind of get a taste of it there, and it's a free workshop, so don't miss it, and hopefully I'll see you there. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care. God bless you, and I will see you next week.